Welcome to the Habitat Conservation Fund Wildlife Area Activities tutorial video. The intent is for nature interpretation, educational, or other enrichment programs designed to bring urban residents into park and wildlife areas. It cannot fund capital outlay. Let's begin reviewing the Wildlife Area Activities Guide. Let's view the table of contents on page 3. Please note that all words and terms in caps are defined in the back of this application guide, beginning on page 35. Let's now turn to page 4 to view the Habitat Conservation Fund, referred to as HCF, category chart, which identifies each of the 7 project categories, including eligible funding types, cost types, and project examples. The wildlife area activities data is in the bottom right column. It's being circled right now. The wildlife activities area data is in, as I said, in the bottom right column. A few samples of eligible projects in this category may include conducting multi-day activities, pre and post activity evaluations, and renting and/or purchasing equipment or transportation. Since we've already reviewed the overall intent of this program at the beginning of this video, let's move to page 6 to review the program overview. The annual allocation. The HCF program allocates approximately $2 million per year to the California Department of Parks and Recreation. Please refer to the HCF webpage for the current amount available for this current application cycle. The application filing deadline. Please disregard the information about delivering or sending applications to OGALS. All applications must be submitted online. Visit the HCF webpage for application filing deadline information, as well as the link to the online application. Submit the application online before 5 p.m. Any application submitted to our online portal after 5 p.m. will not be accepted. The grant performance period for each program is 5 years, starting on July 1st of the fiscal year, following the application due date, based on final enactment of the state budget. Please refer to the HCF webpage for the grant performance period dates. For the minimum and maximum grant request amounts. Although the current guide notes, grant requests typically should not exceed $200,000. Please request the amount needed. There is no set minimum grant amount. Projects in all categories compete for the funding available. There is no designated amount set aside for a particular category. Required match. HCF does require match funds. Match requirement will be reviewed later in greater detail. However, please be aware of 2 key points. Number 1, there is a required non-state dollar-for-dollar match. And number 2, the match must be spent on eligible costs under the program.
Next, let's move to page 7 to view eligible applicants. Eligible applicants include cities, counties, or districts. See the definition of districts on page 35 of this application guide to ensure your district is an eligible applicant. Please note that nonprofit organizations and state and federal agencies are not eligible applicants for the HCF program. Eligible projects. Please refer to the Habitat Conservation Fund category chart we reviewed earlier in order to view examples of eligible project types. Ineligible projects. In the middle of page 7 is a list of ineligible projects, such as projects that do not include a park and/or wildlife area, projects that involve capital outlay expenses. Please review the specific list of ineligible projects to ensure that your proposal will be eligible. Next, let's move to page 9 to review the application process. There is no limit to the number of applications an applicant can submit. Each project site must have its own application. An application cannot include more than one category. At a minimum, the project selection criteria must be submitted at the application deadline. No revisions to the project criteria can be accepted after this date. For the remainder of the application checklist documents, such as site plans and CEQA, we can work with you after the application deadline to complete. Now, let's proceed to page 10 to review the application packet checklist. Only submit items listed in the application checklist. Do not submit additional items such as letters of support. We understand the work it takes to get these letters. Instead, focus on planning the project. All projects are reviewed based on the merits of the project using the project selection criteria only. Let's move to page 12 to review the application form. A fillable version is located on the HCF website. Complete all applicable fields on this form and have it signed by the applicant's authorized representative.
Let's proceed to page 14 to view the authorizing resolution form. Resolutions indicate your governing body supports the project and designates an authorized representative position who will sign forms in the application package. Please use language provided in the template. Please note number 5, the resolution requires a designated position, for example, a manager, director, etc., not a person's name. This position will also be responsible for signing payment requests if awarded. Therefore, if a specific person is identified and that person moves to a new position, additional paperwork may be required to designate a new authorized representative. This is why designating a position title rather than a person is important. The authorizing resolution is a common example of a checklist item that may need extra time to complete, and that is acceptable. Include a placeholder and a time frame of when the resolution will be adopted. Now, let's turn to page 15 to view the instructions for grant scope cost estimate form. This form will be used to establish the expected grant deliverables. Let's move to the middle of this page to view directions for establishing the grant scope. Applicants will describe the specific activities, participants, and locations for the program. The eligible and ineligible costs will be reviewed momentarily. Don't list future phases beyond what will be completed with the grant plus match requirement.
Next, we'll move to the middle of page 16 to review the match instructions. As previously mentioned, this program requires a dollar-for-dollar match. Match must be committed at the time of application. Future fundraising is not considered committed. At the bottom of page 16 are the eligible match sources. Eligible match sources include local funds, local general funds, and local bond funds, private funds, donated materials and services, value of donated land for acquisition projects only, and federal funds. Other state funds are ineligible match sources. Moving to page 17, the rules regarding match are the following. Match can only be spent on eligible costs, as the same rules apply to both grant request plus match. The grant and the required match amounts combined cannot pay for more than 25% of pre-construction costs of the total HCF project. These costs, such as public meetings, focus groups, planning sessions, equipment, or vehicles. At the bottom of this page, there is an example of how to calculate the match amount for your project. Let's move to page 18 to review the actual grant scope cost estimate form. Please describe the specific programming activities on this form and the associated costs. Remember, do not list contingency costs as a separate line item, but fold them into the related feature. Indicate the HCF grant and required match costs, which will equal the estimated total project cost. The total project cost listed here on the grant scope cost estimate form must be consistent with the estimated total project cost listed on the application form. All figures need to be rounded to the nearest whole dollar. Below the chart is where you'll indicate the match sources, amounts, and date committed.
Let's go to page 33 to view the eligible cost chart. The eligible costs for this category are listed on page 33. We encourage you to review these charts while developing your project proposal. Keep in mind the grant performance period for each program is 5 years. Costs are not eligible outside of these dates. The target date is to complete the program and submit final documents to our office by the last working date of March, prior to the end of the grant performance period. Traveling down to page 34, we are now seeing the ineligible cost chart. Please review this list and remember that these ineligible costs cannot be charged to the grant, including capital outlay expenditures, indirect costs, grant writing, and costs incurred prior to the start of the grant performance period. Next, we'll go to page 19 for activity site assurances. This requirement is to ensure that the applicant has the right to perform activities at the proposed site. If the applicant owns the property, provide evidence of ownership, such as a deed. If the applicant does not own the land, the requirements are listed here on pages 19 through 20, which states, at a minimum, the applicant and the landowner need to have a draft agreement, whether it is an easement, permit, or other use agreement that provides assurances that the landowner authorizes the activities to occur and agree to sign this agreement should the grant be awarded. Now we'll proceed to page 21 to view the CEQA compliant certification form. Since the wildlife area activities is for programming, capital outlay is ineligible. It is unlikely that a notice of exemption or notice of determination is applicable. However, applicants are required to provide the CEQA certification form along with the letter explaining that the proposed activities do not constitute a project under CEQA.
Let's move to page 22. The project completion schedule. Please provide a project completion schedule that includes the proposed project's key milestones, including the following, as applicable: other non-site activity assurance agreements, partner agreements, finalizing any instructional materials, including flyers or brochures announcing the project, and pre-activity and post-activity knowledge evaluations, project beginning date, and project end date. Next is a project location map. Please provide a map in the city or county showing highways and street access to the project site and with enough detail to allow a person unfamiliar with the area to locate where the program will occur. Next is a project summary. Provide a one-page summary that describes the proposed project. This summary will not be scored. Next is the project proposal. This includes all responses to the project selection criteria question that we'll review in detail shortly. Now, let's move down to leases and agreements. Please provide a list of all leases, agreements, etc., affecting project lands or the operation and maintenance, excluding those relevant to the activity site assurances if applicable. Moving to the bottom of this page, we'll encounter the photos of project site. Upload photos of the proposed project sites sufficient to show the area where wildlife activity projects will be conducted, and with captions describing and identifying each photo.
Now let's proceed to project selection criteria on page 23. There is a total of 100 possible points. Everyone starts with 0. Points can only be gained. At the bottom of this page, you'll see the overview of criteria and the associated point values. Each criteria is followed by a descriptive rubric identifying the range of points to be gained. Let's begin with criteria number 1, need, on page 24. The applicant will describe the need and overall consequences if the program cannot occur. Describe why the applicant would not have the opportunity to experience the wildlife area activities if the proposed project is not selected for funding. Maximum points would be awarded to projects where a significant need exists. 10 to 16 points will be awarded to where there is moderate need, and 5 to 1 points where there is minimum need. Criteria number 2, site access, is on page 25. Per this program's legislation, the public should have access to the project site, except when access may interfere with habitat protection. Applicants will describe the plans for public access by the time of project completion by providing details on items A through E. A, reasonable entrance fees, parking fees, membership fees, activity fees, or no fees. B, on-site or close-by parking. C, easily available public transportation, bike lanes or trails. D, flexible hours that accommodate target audiences. And E, solutions to any physical, financial, and/or cultural barriers or obstacles to the project site. Viewing this rubric below, you'll see that if the project site is accessible via all 5 items, then 10 points will be awarded. Criteria 3, stakeholder, is on page 26. Here, the applicant will describe the efforts to involve interested parties within the last 2 years, such as community-based stakeholders, nonprofit partners, or other public agency partners in the planning and/or implementation. In the response, include the methods used to notify interested parties of the input opportunity, methods used to obtain the interested parties' ideas, and how the interested parties' ideas were incorporated in project design and/or implementation. The maximum number of points will be awarded to those applicants who make a concerted effort to involve the broadest representation of interested parties in the process.
Criteria 4, applicant capacity, is on page 27. Applicants will respond to their knowledge and/or experience of the process to A, manage group interaction and use adapted techniques to engage participants in learning, and B, assimilate program improvement ideas and incorporate those ideas into future program offerings. OGALS will also review its own records and consider the applicant's performance history with OGALS as part of the project selection process. This includes reviewing the applicant's ability to complete previous grant-funded projects on time, timely submission of project status reports and payment requests, and to adequately operate and maintain previous grant-funded sites. As you can see in the rubric at the bottom of this page, applicants that address significant capacity will be awarded maximum points. Criteria 5, project description, is on page 28. Here, applicants will describe the project, providing a clear, detailed explanation of the A, goals and objectives, B, the project's long-term community impact, and C, targeted population groups to be included in the project activities, such as participants' ages, genders, ethnicities, community-based nonprofit organizations, and etc. Applicants that provide a detailed explanation of all three elements will obtain the maximum 10 points. Next is criteria 6, site locations and activities on page 29. This criteria is broken up into 2 parts, at 5 points each for a total of 10 points. Part A, site locations. Applicants will describe the proposed park and/or wildlife area locations at which the project will be conducted. Include the following: A, the name of the locations, B, a description of the proposed project site locations, and C, the reasons the proposed project site locations were selected. And then Part B, for site activities, applicants will describe the actual wildlife area activities the participants will experience. Include the following: A, a number of activities for the same participants, B, the description of the specific project activities proposed, C, the reasons the proposed project activities were selected. Applicants that address all items will receive the maximum 10 points.
Criteria number 7 is partnership opportunities, and this is located on page 30. Here, applicants will describe how they will work with other agencies, for example, governmental agencies, nonprofit organizations, schools, older adults groups, volunteer groups, etc., to complete the project. The description should encompass each partner's A, knowledge of wildlife areas, B, skills and abilities that assist the project participants, C, capacity to provide in-kind services, for example, equipment, supplies, labor, etc., D, capacity to provide funding support, and E, potential to contribute to the project's longevity. Applicants working with partners that can provide assistance in all 5 areas will receive the maximum 10 points. Criteria number 8, pre-activity knowledge evaluation, is on page 31. Applicants will describe how they evaluate and document the participants' level of knowledge before the wildlife area activities occur. The evaluation should include the following objectives. A, the relationship of an urban ecosystem to the wildlife area ecosystem. B, the need for wildlife areas and habitat protection. C, preparedness and safety practices, for example, appropriate equipment and clothing for the wildlife area activities. And D, the participants' current comfort level with proposed activities. The maximum number of points will be awarded to projects where all 4 objectives will be evaluated and documented.
The final criteria is number 9, post-activity knowledge evaluation, and is located on page 32. The purpose of the post-activity evaluation is twofold: to evaluate and document both the activity's short-term effectiveness and long-term effectiveness. Similar to criteria 8, applicants will describe how they will evaluate and document the level of participants' knowledge immediately after the last event occurs. Additionally, applicants will describe how they will document the participants' activity knowledge retention at least 3 months after the last event occurs. The evaluation should include the following objectives. A, the relationship of an urban ecosystem to a wildlife area ecosystem. B, the need for wildlife areas and habitat protection. C, the use of personal preparedness and safety practices, such as appropriate equipment and clothing for the wildlife area activities. And D, the participant's comfort level with future participation in similar activities and/or visits to the same project locations. It is important to note that the maximum number of points will be awarded to projects which provide the methodology to evaluate and document the participants' understanding of each of the objectives for criteria 8 and 9. Since we've already reviewed the eligible and ineligible costs on pages 33 through 34, we'll move to the program definitions starting on page 35. During our review of the table of contents, this list of program definitions was mentioned. Remember that all words and terms in caps are defined here. Please use this list to familiarize yourself with the program's definitions. This concludes the Wildlife Area Activities tutorial video. Thank you for listening.